The council hall was silent, save for the quiet hum of advanced technology echoing through the room. Alien leaders from across the galaxy gathered in their ornate chairs, each a member of a species far older and more powerful than humanity. They had been meeting for hours, discussing the future of the galaxy, and today, they faced a matter they had long since dismissed: the human race. One leader, a tall being with shimmering scales, spoke first. "We have all witnessed humanity's rise," she said, her voice cold and dismissive. "Yet they remain a primitive species, too disorganized, too raw for any real consideration. Earth is nothing more than a barely advanced world with no place in the greater galactic order." A murmur of agreement spread among the council. They all nodded, each lost in the assumption that humanity's time had not yet come. To them, humans were little more than a curiosity, a species still struggling with the basics of technology, far from anything worth taking seriously. The aliens had dismissed humanity's attempts at exploration. Their spacefaring missions laughed off as minor achievements, not even worthy of attention from the council. But their reach grows, another leader, his voice deep and guttural, said. Their technology, while primitive, is evolving. It's only a matter of time before they try to expand beyond their tiny corner of the universe. Perhaps we should consider their rise more seriously? The first leader scoffed. We have dealt with young species before. They make noise, they struggle, they falter, and eventually they fall back into their place. Humans will be no different. Yet even as she spoke, a shadow passed over the council chamber. It was subtle at first, just a shift in the light, but it was enough to make the leaders pause. One by one, their eyes turned toward the source. A single human figure stood at the far end of the room, dressed in simple but pristine attire. The human diplomat had arrived. The room went quiet. The human was a man, young, no more than 30 Earth years, with sharp eyes and an air of calm confidence that seemed out of place in the room filled with such powerful beings. He was alone, which only seemed to underline the absurdity of his presence. No one had expected him, no one had invited him. But here he was, standing silently, awaiting acknowledgement. The leader with the shimmering scales raised an eyebrow. "And what is this?" she asked, her tone dripping with disbelief. "A human diplomat? Come to beg for scraps from the council?" The human didn't flinch. He simply stood there, his gaze steady. "I come on behalf of humanity," he said, his voice low but firm. "And I do not beg for scraps." The council members exchanged amused glances. Some suppressed chuckles, others shook their heads as if to say, "Is this really happening?" The human was so out of place here, in this gathering of the most powerful minds in the galaxy. "How quaint," the deep-voiced leader said mockingly. "You think you can simply walk into our council uninvited and command our attention?" The human diplomat didn't respond to the insult. He only stepped forward, his gaze now fixed on the council. "Perhaps you misunderstand," he said. "This is not an invitation. You will all see what I have brought before you." He raised a small, unassuming device from his pocket and pressed a single button. At first, nothing happened. The council watched him, puzzled. What was this strange human doing? Was he trying to show them something trivial? Something to further prove their point about humanity's so-called primitive state? Then suddenly the lights in the room flickered. A low rumble vibrated the floor beneath their feet. The shadows in the room shifted. The leaders were momentarily taken aback. What was happening? Then the walls of the chamber began to hum, and the shadows retreated, revealing something enormous. Something no one had expected. A colossal shape emerged from the dark corner. Something that seemed to stretch out endlessly, hidden in plain sight. The alien council froze. The shape was not an illusion or a trick of light. It was a massive structure, a monument of gleaming metal, shaped with a sophistication and scale that made the eyes of the alien leaders widen in disbelief. It was a space citadel, and it seemed to be coming to life before their very eyes, slowly revealing its intricate design. The very air seemed to vibrate with its power. One of the leaders stood, his voice cracking as he asked, "What is this? How is this possible?" The human diplomat smiled, but it was not a smile of triumph. It was the calm, knowing smile of someone who had expected this reaction. "This," he said, "is humanity's secret. This is the space citadel you never believed we could build." There was a stunned silence. The entire council stared at the structure, their faces pale, their hearts racing. They had believed humans to be nothing more than a chaotic species, incapable of such monumental achievements. But what stood before them now defied everything they had thought. The diplomat, still standing resolutely before the council, spoke again, his voice steady and clear. You once called us primitive. Now you will see the true power of humanity. The alien leaders stood in stunned silence. It was clear now this was no bluff. Humanity had risen far beyond their expectations. As the last of the shadows receded and the full glory of the Citadel came into view, one thought echoed in the minds of the council members. Humanity was no longer the insignificant race they had once believed them to be, and they were about to learn just how wrong they had been. The diplomat's words hung in the air, as heavy and inevitable as the Citadel itself. We are here, and we are no longer to be dismissed. The chamber was still. No one moved. The alien leaders stared in disbelief at the Space Citadel that now loomed before them, its massive form filling the hall, its shimmering surface reflecting the dim lights above. It was a work of unimaginable beauty and power, unlike anything they had seen before. For centuries, the alien races had perfected their own technology, creating weapons and structures capable of feats beyond most beings' comprehension, yet none of them had ever conceived of something like this. The human diplomat stood unflinching, his arms crossed as the council members gaped in stunned silence. The once mighty alien leaders who had scorned humanity as a primitive backward race now looked like children caught unprepared in the presence of a force far greater than they could have imagined. It was impossible to process. How could such a species, so young and supposedly insignificant, build something of this magnitude? The questions piled up, but none of the aliens dared to speak first. They were still coming to terms with the implications of what they were seeing. Finally, the leader with the shimmering scales was the first to recover from her stupor. She spoke, her voice now far less confident than it had been only moments ago. What is this? How did humanity do this? The diplomat didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. The council had been so sure of their superiority. They had been so certain that they could control humanity's fate, dismissing them as nothing more than a primitive race. Now the tables had turned. This, he said finally, his voice steady and deliberate, is the product of humanity's true potential. For years we've been working in the shadows, perfecting our technology, building what you thought was impossible. What you see before you is the culmination of centuries of human ingenuity, of quiet perseverance, and most of all, of ambition. The scales leader took a step back, her eyes wide with disbelief. But this is impossible. We've watched you. You're still primitive? The diplomat finished for her. You were wrong. We've been working on this since before your species could even imagine what true progress meant. We didn't need your approval, your recognition. We built this for ourselves, and now we'll use it to protect what is ours. The leader with the deep guttural voice, who had been silent until now, grunted and crossed his arms. His eyes narrowed. Protection from whom? You think you can simply waltz into the galactic stage and demand respect? Your citadel is impressive, yes, but it's nothing more than a big show of force. There is no substance behind it. The diplomat looked at him coolly. You're right about one thing, he said, his voice tinged with cold confidence. We didn't expect your respect. We didn't even need your recognition. But now you'll understand that humanity is not some fragile species waiting to be crushed by your superiority. You thought you could push us aside, dismiss us as unimportant, but we were building something far beyond your comprehension. The council leader shifted uncomfortably, glancing nervously at the Citadel. The air had shifted. The tension in the room was palpable. For the first time, they felt vulnerable, exposed. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were seeing the consequences of that mistake. Another leader, one with glowing blue eyes, spoke next. This Citadel, what is its purpose? What do you intend to do with such power? You cannot possibly believe you'll be allowed to use it unchecked. The balance of the galaxy? The balance of the galaxy? The diplomat's laugh was almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. The balance of the galaxy was never yours to begin with. You've ruled over us for centuries, telling us what we can and can't do. You've held the power, but not anymore. The age of your control is over. The alien leaders exchanged uncertain glances, a ripple of doubt running through them. The human diplomat was right. They had always assumed that humanity would remain weak and fragmented, never capable of threatening their hold over the galaxy. But the sight before them now, a perfectly functional, fully operational citadel capable of unimaginable feats, was a wake-up call. This was not a threat they had been prepared for. Humanity had not just caught up. They had surpassed them in ways the Council hadn't even considered possible. The glowing-eyed leader swallowed hard, his thoughts racing. If you think we'll just let you walk away with this power, you're gravely mistaken. The diplomat stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. We're not walking away with anything. We're taking our place. Humanity was never meant to be a footnote in your history. You will learn that we are not just survivors, we are builders, innovators, and warriors. And we won't stop until we've shown you our full potential. A silence fell over the room again, but this time it was not one of uncertainty. It was a silence filled with the weight of realization. The alien leaders understood now that humanity was no longer a race they could ignore. The Citadel, standing like an ancient monolith, was a symbol of everything humanity had achieved, and everything they were yet to become. Then what? The scale leader asked, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. What do you want from us? Nothing, the diplomat replied simply. You've already given us everything we need, your doubts, your scorn, and that will be your undoing. As he turned to leave, the Citadel began to hum, its power drawing the eyes of every alien leader in the room. The walls vibrated as if the Citadel was alive, and for the first time in their long existence, the aliens feared what humanity might become. The doors to the chamber opened, and the diplomat exited. Behind him, the Citadel loomed larger than life, an indomitable symbol of humanity's rise from the shadows. And as the doors closed, the alien leaders knew this was only the beginning. They had misjudged humanity, and now they were about to face the consequences. The council hall was left in a hushed state, the once confident and dismissive alien leaders now frozen in the wake of humanity's unexpected revelation. They had been so certain that their ancient superiority would remain unchallenged, so convinced that the balance of power would forever tilt in their favor. But humanity had shattered that illusion with the simple flick of a switch, revealing the Space Citadel and proving that their species had quietly surpassed them in ways they had never anticipated. Outside the chamber, the human diplomat, whose name was now a whisper in the hallways, made his way down the narrow corridors of the alien stronghold. He walked with the calm assurance of someone who knew their work was far from over. His role in the council had been a small one, but the impact it had caused was monumental. The Citadel was not just a tool of power, it was a message that the days of humanity being overlooked and underestimated were finished. As he walked, he passed by alien guards, who watched him with wide eyes, unsure of what to make of him. They had been trained to serve and protect the council, to uphold the rule of their kind, but today something had shifted. They could no longer look at humanity with the same dismissive attitude. The human diplomat, with his quiet resolve, had done more than just unveil a powerful weapon. He had unveiled a truth that no one in the galaxy was ready to face. Humanity was no longer to be ignored. The diplomat's steps echoed through the hallway, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He remembered the early days of human exploration, when Earth had been nothing more than a primitive planet caught in the grip of war and poverty. The galaxy had looked on from afar, unconcerned, believing that humans would never amount to anything more than a short-lived experiment. They were wrong, and now he was here to make them realize just how wrong they had been. The first human settlements in space had been small, almost insignificant. A few colonies on distant moons, some exploratory ships venturing farther into the stars. At the time, humanity had been at the mercy of alien forces, constantly looking over their shoulders, afraid of the might of the galactic powers. But that fear had fueled their progress. It had driven them to learn faster, to innovate, to build. In secret, humanity had been working on something far greater than any alien had ever imagined. Years of covert development had culminated in the creation of the Citadel, but its purpose was never just to show the galaxy that humans could build something grand. The Citadel was a fortress, a city that could survive anything the galaxy threw at it. It was a weapon, one that humanity would use to defend their place in the stars. The human diplomat reached the control center of the Citadel, where a team of engineers and strategists awaited him. They had been working tirelessly, refining the Citadel's systems, ensuring that it was ready for whatever came next. It was more than just a building. It was a living, breathing force of nature, capable of reshaping the course of galactic history. As he entered the room, one of the engineers looked up at him with a mixture of admiration and anxiety. We've completed the final systems check, sir. Everything is ready to go. The diplomat nodded, his mind already focused on the next steps. Activate the defense systems. I want the galaxy to know that humanity is not a species to be underestimated. The engineer hesitated for a moment but then complied, typing commands into the control panel. The lights in the room flickered as the Citadel hummed to life. Outside, the massive structure that had once been hidden in the shadows was now fully operational, its weapons systems coming online with a low, ominous growl. Humanity had built the Citadel not only to survive, but to thrive in the face of those who wished them harm. And now the galaxy would see what humans were truly capable of. Meanwhile, the Council was in turmoil. Alien leaders, once confident in their supremacy, were now scrambling to make sense of what had just occurred. The Citadel was not just a symbol of humanity's advancement. It was a direct challenge to their power. They had underestimated humanity for so long, and now they were faced with the reality that the humans had far more to offer than they had ever imagined. The Scale Leader, who had once dismissed humanity as a nuisance, sat in the council chamber with her head in her hands. "We should have seen this coming," she muttered to herself. "They've been working in the shadows for years. We should have paid more attention." Another leader, the one with glowing blue eyes, spoke with a tone of uncertainty. "But we never thought they could achieve this. A Space Citadel? It's too much. Too powerful." The leader with the deep voice, who had initially been the most dismissive of all, stood up, his gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of him. "We cannot allow this. Humanity must be stopped before their rise becomes a threat to everything we've worked for." But the glowing-eyed leader shook his head. "What can we do? They've already shown us that they can outsmart us. Their Citadel is a weapon, and it's capable of far more than we can imagine. We can't just attack them without understanding the full scope of their power." As the debate raged on, the diplomat remained focused on his mission. He knew that the galaxy would be slow to respond, that the alien leaders would hesitate before making their move. But time was not on their side. Humanity's silent rebellion had already begun, and the Citadel was just the first step. As the Citadel's systems powered up, the diplomat stood at the control center, looking out over the stars. It was not just about power, it was about respect. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, and no alien species would be allowed to forget that again. "Prepare for the next phase," he said quietly, his voice resolute. "Let them see what happens when you underestimate humanity." In the distance, the stars shimmered, and the diplomat knew that the galaxy would soon know that humanity was no longer a passive observer. In the vast expanse of space, they were players, and they would shape the future on their own terms. The galaxy was a vast, unforgiving place filled with countless species, each with their own agendas, ambitions, and histories. But for the first time in eons, the entire Galactic Council found itself in a position it had never anticipated. Humanity, once considered a primitive race, now stood at the center of the galaxy's most heated political debate. The Citadel was humanity's first true statement of power, a massive, impenetrable fortress capable of reshaping the balance of the galaxy. But while the alien leaders had been stunned by its sheer size and complexity, they had not yet realized the full extent of what it meant. Hours after the unveiling, the diplomat returned to his ship, a sleek, unassuming vessel that now seemed to glow with an unseen energy. As he sat alone in the cockpit, the weight of the situation settled in. The Citadel was ready, but it wasn't just the Citadel they would need to protect. Humanity was facing an entire galaxy that was not prepared to accept them as equals. The diplomat looked out into the vastness of space, his thoughts turning to the Council's response. The alien leaders had retreated into their chambers to deliberate, unsure of how to act. For centuries they had held dominion over the galaxy, and now a human species, once dismissed as insignificant, had thrown their entire system into chaos. Back at the council hall, the tension was palpable. The Scale Leader, who had once been so sure of humanity's inferiority, now stood at the head of the room, addressing the other leaders with a stern expression. "We cannot allow this," she declared, her voice echoing in the chamber. "Humanity must be stopped before they think they can challenge our rule. If we let them continue to grow in power, they'll destabilize everything we've worked for." The room was filled with murmurs of agreement, but there was hesitation in the air. The glowing-eyed leader, who had once dismissed humanity as a nuisance, was now pacing nervously. We cannot move forward blindly. We need to know what that citadel is capable of. Its weapons are unlike anything we've seen. If we attack too quickly, we may provoke a response we aren't prepared for. The leader with the deep, guttural voice crossed his arms, his face hard with determination. We need to act before they become an even greater threat. There is no more room for hesitation. But the glowing-eyed leader stopped pacing, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps there's another way. Humanity is still in its infancy. If we can find a way to bring them to the table, we may be able to control them. There's no need for violence yet. We should test them, see if we can exploit their weaknesses. The scale leader's sharp eyes narrowed. And if they don't bend to our will, then we will be forced to act, the glowing-eyed leader replied. His tone was cold, but there was a hint of uncertainty behind his words. As the debate raged on, the diplomat remained on his ship, far away from the chaos of the council. He had expected their hesitation. They were old, ancient beings, steeped in tradition and unwilling to change. But humanity wasn't interested in playing by their rules. The diplomat knew that the galaxy would either accept them or face the consequences of underestimating humanity once again. The citadel hummed softly in the distance, now fully operational. It was a beacon of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the brink, and the diplomat knew that they could never go back to the way things were. The galaxy would have to adapt or it would be left behind. A soft chime echoed in the cockpit as a communication signal blinked on the control panel. The diplomat's heart skipped a beat as he saw the message was from the council. He opened the transmission, and the scale leader's face appeared on the screen, her expression stern. "Human diplomat," she began, her voice cold but with a note of restrained respect. "The council has agreed to meet with you. We want to discuss your citadel and the future of humanity in the galaxy. But know this. If you fail to meet our expectations, we will have no choice but to take action." The diplomat's gaze hardened. He had anticipated this meeting, but now, as the council's message echoed in his mind, he could feel the weight of his position. They had no intention of simply accepting humanity's rise. They wanted control, and they would use any means necessary to keep it. But humanity was no longer in the position of weakness. The citadel was proof of that. He leaned forward, speaking in a voice that carried the weight of his resolve. "I'm not here to negotiate terms, nor am I here to beg for your approval. Humanity has proven its worth, and we will no longer be ignored. The Citadel is a gift to the galaxy, but it's also a warning. You can either accept humanity as an equal, or you can continue down the path of confrontation. But know this, we won't back down." The scale leader's eyes narrowed. "You think you can defy us? You're nothing but a fleeting moment in the grand scheme of things. We've ruled the galaxy for millennia. We will not be cowed by a single species." The diplomat's lips curled into a thin smile. "And yet here you are, scrambling to find a way to control us. You've underestimated humanity for too long. The Citadel is just the beginning. We are not a threat to be eliminated. We are a force to be reckoned with." For a moment, the scale leader remained silent, as if processing his words. Then, with a stiff nod, she ended the transmission. The diplomat stood, his gaze fixed on the stars outside the ship's window. The confrontation was inevitable. The galaxy would either accept humanity's place among them, or they would be forced to face the consequences of their arrogance. The Citadel was not just a structure, it was the first of many steps, and humanity would never be turned back. As the diplomat prepared for the next phase of the plan, he knew that the battle for the future had only just begun. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had no intention of being anyone's subordinate. The tension in the galaxy was palpable. What had once been a distant whisper, humanity's rise, was now an undeniable roar. Across the stars, alien ships moved in formation, as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. It was inevitable. Humanity had made its move, and now the galaxy had to react. The human diplomat sat alone in the command center of the Citadel, watching the holographic displays flicker to life. Ships were moving across the galaxy, the Council's fleets positioning themselves near key trade routes and strategic locations. A show of force. A challenge. Humanity's quiet rebellion had become a galactic standoff, but humanity wasn't about to back down. The Citadel had made that clear. As he stared at the map of the galaxy, a voice broke his concentration. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the Council." The diplomat didn't flinch. He had been expecting this, though he had hoped it would come sooner. He nodded, gesturing for the technician to open the channel. The screen flickered and the harsh, cold face of the scale leader appeared before him once again. But this time there was something different about her expression. There was no arrogance, no dismissive sneer. Instead, there was a mixture of concern and cautious respect. "Human diplomat," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. "The Council has convened. We have reviewed the power of the Citadel, and we are reconsidering our position." The diplomat's eyes remained steady. "Reconsidering?" The scale leader took a breath, and for a moment she appeared human, vulnerable. "We did not understand. We thought we could continue to dismiss your kind, thinking you would always be beneath us. But we were wrong. The Citadel is not just a weapon, it's a symbol, and that symbol has shaken the very foundation of our rule." The diplomat leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "I told you that humanity would no longer be ignored. We have the right to exist, to be treated as equals in the galaxy. We've earned that right not through violence or fear, but through innovation, through unity, and through the determination to survive." The scale leader's eyes flickered with a hint of something deeper, regret, perhaps, or realization. "We cannot pretend anymore that you are just another species vying for power. We are at a crossroads, diplomat. The galaxy is changing, and we cannot stand in your way without risking everything." The diplomat's mind raced. This was the moment humanity would either be absorbed into the galaxy's political machine or become its new rulers. But he was no fool. He knew that no power came without consequence, and there were forces within the Council that would never accept humanity as an equal. "You're right," he said, his voice dropping into a lower register laden with intent. "You cannot stand in our way, and you shouldn't. Humanity has no interest in domination. We are not here to rule. We are here to protect ourselves. The Citadel is a symbol of that power, but it is also a sign of our willingness to stand up for our future. If you choose to fight us, then the galaxy will know that you've made that decision, not us." There was a long pause. The scale leader's gaze never wavered, but she didn't respond immediately. Finally, she spoke again, her tone more measured, less confrontational. "We agree, human diplomat. We will not fight. But there are factions among us, races that will never accept you. They will never allow humanity to hold a position of strength in the galaxy." The diplomat's lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. "Let them try. We've already seen what their power really is." The scale leader's gaze darkened. "This is not over. The galaxy has changed. The Citadel may have been the first spark, but it will not be the last. What happens next depends on you." The screen went dark and the diplomat stood, his mind racing with the weight of the conversation. The Council had officially acknowledged humanity's power, but there was no mistaking the threat still lingering in the air. The galaxy was now divided. Some would seek peace. Others would demand war. As he turned to face the wall of the Citadel's command center, he knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had come far, but it would take more than a single victory to change the fate of the galaxy. On the other side of the galaxy, alien factions were already mobilizing. Ships prepared for war, fleets gathering in the shadows of distant moons waiting for the signal to attack. The Citadel's display of power had shaken them, but in their hearts, they believed humanity was still just a blip in the grand timeline of galactic history. They were wrong. The diplomat's voice rang out as he addressed his officers. "Prepare for a new age, a new era of humanity. We will not be passive any longer. The galaxy will respect us, or face the consequences." As the Citadel's engines hummed to life, the first fleet of humanity's forces began to move, the stars stretching out before them like a path to destiny. It wasn't just the Citadel they were protecting, it was their future. The future of a species that had never stopped fighting, never stopped dreaming.